The gunshot echoed through the canyon, and Quinn Montgomery felt his horse stumble beneath him before he even registered the pain searing through his left shoulder. He gripped the reins tighter with his right hand, urging his mare forward through the narrow pass just outside Watsonville, California, a town he had been trying to reach for 3 days now. The year was 1876, and these mountain trails were becoming increasingly dangerous with bandits and desperate men lurking in every shadow. Quinn had learned to travel alone, to trust no one, and to keep his head down. That philosophy had kept him alive for 32 years, though lately he wondered what the point was when he had nothing and no one waiting for him anywhere. The bleeding slowed as he pressed his bandana against the wound, realizing the bullet had merely grazed him. Lucky, he thought, though luck seemed like a generous term for his life lately. He had been a ranch hand, a cattle driver, a bounty hunter for a brief and regrettable period, and now he was simply drifting. The small inheritance from his uncle had bought him a modest piece of land near Watsonville. Nothing grand, just enough acres for a few horses, and maybe some cattle if he ever got around to it. Solitude suited him fine, or so he told himself during the long nights when the silence grew so thick it felt like drowning. As Quinn rounded the bend, his mare suddenly reared back, nearly throwing him from the saddle. His shoulder screamed in protest as he fought to maintain his seat. There, in the middle of the trail, sat a small figure. A child, a boy maybe 4 or 5 years old, covered in dust and tears streaming down his face. The kid was just sitting there in the dirt, crying like his heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Quinn dismounted carefully, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He approached slowly, the way he would approach a spooked colt. "Hey there, little one," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy looked up at him with eyes so blue they reminded Quinn of the sky just after a storm clears. His hair was dark brown, matted with dirt and sweat. He wore clothes that might have been nice once, but now they were torn and filthy. The child's bottom lip trembled as he stared at Quinn. "My mama," the boy whispered. "She told me to wait. She said she would come back." Quinn looked around the empty trail, seeing nothing but rocks and scrub brush. No wagon tracks, no horse prints besides his own, no sign of another living soul. "How long have you been waiting, son?" The boy's face crumpled. "I do not know. The sun went down and came back up. I am hungry." Something twisted in Quinn's chest, an unfamiliar sensation that he did not particularly like. He had no experience with children. He knew horses, cattle, guns, and hard work. Children were a mystery, soft and breakable and requiring things he did not know how to give. But he could not leave the boy here. That much was clear. "What is your name?" Quinn asked, crouching down despite the protest from his shoulder. "Thomas," the boy said quietly. "Thomas Turner." "Well, Thomas, my name is Quinn. I think maybe your mama got lost or had some trouble. How about you come with me into town? We can get you something to eat and find out where your mama went. Does that sound all right?" Thomas nodded, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. Quinn sighed and scooped the boy up with his good arm, settling him in front of the saddle before mounting behind him. The child was lighter than he expected, too light probably, and Quinn could feel him trembling. The ride into Watsonville took another hour, and by the time they arrived, Thomas had fallen asleep against Quinn's chest. The town was small but growing, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a church, a schoolhouse, and a sheriff's office. Quinn headed straight for the latter. Sheriff Daniels was a weathered man in his 50s with gray threading through his beard and eyes that had seen too much. He looked up from his desk as Quinn entered, carrying the sleeping child. "Found him on the trail about 5 miles out," Quinn explained. Says his mother told him to wait for her. Says he has been out there at least a day, maybe more. The sheriff's expression grew grim. Thomas Turner, you said his name was. That is what he told me. Anyone else with him? Woman in her 20s, dark hair, traveling alone. Quinn shook his head. Just the boy. You know something about this? Sheriff Daniels stood, moving around his desk. Woman came through here about 3 days ago, had the boy with her. She was asking about work, seemed desperate. I told her the boarding house might need help, sent her that direction. Next morning she was gone, thought she had moved on. You say you found the boy on the trail, middle of the path, just sitting there crying. The sheriff's jaw tightened. She left him. Lord knows why. Some folks cannot handle the hardship out here. Maybe she thought he would be better off found by someone else than starving with her. The words landed heavy in the small office. Quinn looked down at the sleeping child in his arms, at the dirt on his face, and the way his small hand clutched Quinn's shirt, even in sleep. What happens to him now? I will ask around town, see if anyone can take him in. Might have to send word to Sacramento, see if they have room at the orphanage there. Could take weeks to hear back. Quinn felt that twist in his chest again, sharper this time. I will take him. The words surprised him as much as they surprised the sheriff. Daniels raised his eyebrows. You just got into town yourself, Montgomery. You do not even have your place set up yet. I have a house, walls, a roof. I can figure out the rest. Quinn shifted his weight and Thomas stirred slightly. The boy has been through enough. He does not need to be passed around like an unwanted package. The sheriff studied him for a long moment. You sure about this? Raising a child is not like breaking horses. I am aware, Quinn said dryly, but I am what he has got right now, unless you have a better suggestion. Sheriff Daniels did not, so that settled it. He provided Quinn with some basic supplies from the town's emergency stores, things donated by the church for people in need. Blankets, some canned food, a few spare clothes that might fit Thomas. Quinn added to it from the general store, spending money he had been saving, buying things he had no idea how to use. What did children eat? What did they need? The store owner's wife took pity on him and helped, piling items into his arms with patient explanations. By the time Quinn and Thomas reached his property, the sun was setting. The house was small, just 2 rooms, but it was sturdy. His uncle had built it himself 20 years ago, and though it needed work, the bones were good. Quinn had spent the last week before his ill-fated trip making it livable, fixing the worst of the damage, cleaning out years of dust and mouse droppings. Thomas woke as they entered, looking around with wide, confused eyes. "Where is my mama?" Quinn set him down gently. "We are still looking for her, but you are going to stay with me for now." "Are you hungry?" The boy nodded, and Quinn set about making something resembling a meal. He was not much of a cook, but he could manage beans and bacon, and he had bought some bread in town. Thomas ate like he was starving, which he probably was, and Quinn made a mental note to keep regular meals going forward. After dinner, Quinn heated water and did his best to wash the grime off the boy. Thomas was quiet through most of it, answering questions with single words or nods. Quinn could see the fear and confusion in those blue eyes, and he wished he knew what to say to make it better. But words had never been his strength, so he focused on the practical things. Clean clothes, a warm bed made up on the spare bunk, a glass of water within reach. "Will you stay?" Thomas asked as Quinn turned to leave the room. Quinn paused in the doorway. "I will be right in the other room. You need anything, you call out. I am scared." The words were so small, so honest, that Quinn found himself turning back. He pulled the single chair in the room closer to the bed and sat down. "I know, but you are safe here, I promise." "My mama said that too. She said to wait and she would come back. She promised." Quinn had no response to that. He could not defend a woman who would abandon her child in the wilderness, no matter her reasons. So instead, he just sat there in the dim lamplight until Thomas finally fell asleep, tears drying on his cheeks. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Quinn would wake at dawn, a habit so ingrained it was like breathing. He would start coffee and breakfast, and by the time the food was ready, Thomas would emerge from the bedroom, rubbing his eyes. The boy was quiet, almost eerily so, and Quinn worried about it but did not know how to fix it. He set about establishing routines because routines made sense. Breakfast, then chores. Thomas was too young for much, but Quinn found small tasks for him. Collecting eggs from the chickens Quinn had bought, filling water buckets, simple things that made the boy feel useful. In the afternoons, Quinn worked on repairs to the property while Thomas played nearby, always within sight. Quinn was hyper-aware of the child's presence, constantly counting to make sure he was still there, still safe. At night, Quinn would read to Thomas from the few books he owned. His reading was not polished, but Thomas did not seem to mind. The boy would curl up against his side, thumb in his mouth, listening to stories about far-off places and grand adventures. Those were the moments when Thomas seemed almost at peace. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Sheriff Daniels stopped by occasionally with updates. There had been no word of Thomas's mother. No one had seen her, no body had been found, nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished. They sent inquiries to other towns, posted notices, but the frontier was vast and people disappeared all the time. Quinn found himself hoping they would not find her, which made him feel like a terrible person. But the truth was, Thomas was starting to feel like his. The boy was smiling more, talking more. He followed Quinn around like a shadow, asking questions about everything. Why did horses need shoes? How did chickens make eggs? Where did the sun go at night? Quinn answered as best he could, and when he did not know, he admitted it. Thomas seemed to appreciate that honesty. The boy was smart, Quinn realized, sharp as a tack and eager to learn. It made him angry all over again at the woman who had left such a bright soul to die alone on a mountain trail. It was late October when everything changed. Quinn was in the barn, mucking stalls while Thomas played with a wooden horse Quinn had carved for him. The sound of hoofbeats made Quinn straighten, his hand instinctively going to the gun at his hip. Visitors were rare, and in his experience, unexpected visitors were rarely good news. A woman rode into his yard on a horse that looked about ready to collapse. She was thin, almost gaunt, with dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. Her clothes were travel-worn and dusty, and there was a desperate quality to the way she dismounted, stumbling slightly as her feet hit the ground. Then she saw Thomas, and the sound that came out of her was somewhere between a sob and a prayer. Thomas. The boy looked up, his wooden horse falling from his hands. "Mama," she ran to him, falling to her knees and pulling him into her arms. Thomas seemed frozen, uncertain, but then he was hugging her back and crying, and Quinn felt like an intruder witnessing something too private for his eyes. The woman was crying too, her whole body shaking as she clutched her son. "I am so sorry, baby. I am so sorry. Mama is here now. Mama is here." Quinn cleared his throat and the woman's head snapped up. Her eyes were the same blue as Thomas's, red-rimmed and swollen from tears. She struggled to her feet, keeping Thomas close. "You found him," she whispered. "You kept him safe." "Yes, madam." Quinn did not know what else to say. He was still processing the fact that she was here, that she had come back. "I am Rebecca Turner," she said, her voice shaking. "I know you must think terrible things about me. I know what I did was unforgivable." Quinn said nothing, waiting. Rebecca looked down at Thomas, running her hand through his hair. "I was sick. Fever. I could barely think straight. We were traveling to Sacramento where my sister lives, but I ran out of money. I thought I could make it, but then the fever hit and I was not thinking clearly. I was terrified Thomas would catch it from me, terrified he would die because of my weakness. She was crying again, the words tumbling out like she had been holding them in for too long. I thought if I left him where someone would find him, he would be safe. I thought I was dying. I rode as far as I could and then I just collapsed. A traveling preacher found me, took me to a mission. It was 2 weeks before the fever broke, another week before I was strong enough to travel. I came back as fast as I could. I have been riding for days, asking everyone I saw about a little boy. The sheriff in Watsonville told me someone had found him, told me where to find you. Thomas was crying against her skirt, and Quinn saw the way she held him like she would never let go. He wanted to be angry. Part of him was angry. But he also saw the truth in her story, the desperation and the fear and the relief that she had found her son alive. He has been safe here, Quinn said finally. Fed, clothed, cared for. Thank you. The words were inadequate and Rebecca seemed to know it. I have no way to repay you, I have nothing. But thank you for giving me my son back, Quinn nodded. Your horse needs water and rest, you probably do too. Come inside. He turned toward the house, and after a moment he heard them following. Inside, he set about making coffee and warming up the stew he had made earlier. Rebecca sat at the table with Thomas in her lap, holding him like he might disappear if she loosened her grip. Quinn studied her in the lamplight. She was younger than he had thought at first, probably mid-20s. Her face was drawn and pale, but he could see the beauty underneath the exhaustion. There was a strength in her eyes, too, a determination that spoke of someone who had fought hard for survival. Have you eaten? He asked. She shook her head. Not much. I have been more focused on finding Thomas. He dished out generous portions of stew and set them on the table along with bread and butter. Rebecca set Thomas in his own chair, though she kept one hand on his shoulder as they ate. The boy was watching her like he was afraid she might vanish. Where is your husband? Quinn asked, then immediately regretted the question when he saw Rebecca's face close off. Dead, she said quietly. He died 8 months ago. Accident at the lumber mill where he worked. We were living in Oregon then. Without his income, I could not afford our home. I wrote to my sister in Sacramento. She said we could stay with her and her husband until I got back on my feet. I sold everything we had to buy passage, but the stage line went bankrupt halfway through the journey. They just left us at a station and never came back. I spent the last of my money on the horse and supplies. I thought we could make it the rest of the way. It was a story Quinn had heard variations of too many times. The West was full of people trying to outrun tragedy, trying to find something better, only to discover that hardship followed them wherever they went. What will you do now? He asked. Rebecca looked lost. I do not know. Get to Sacramento somehow. My sister does not know what happened. She must be worried sick. That is still a week's travel, maybe more depending on the route. Your horse is in no condition for it. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper, but I do not have any other choice. Quinn made a decision then that would change everything, though he did not know it yet. Stay here. For a few days at least. Let your horse recover. Let yourself recover. Then we will figure out what comes next. Rebecca's eyes widened. I cannot impose on you any more than I already have. You are not imposing. I have the space and Thomas is comfortable here. Makes sense to take a few days to plan properly rather than rush off and end up in trouble again. He could see her warring with herself, pride battling with practicality. Finally, practicality won. Just for a few days. And I will earn my keep. I can cook, clean, mend, whatever you need. Fair enough, Quinn agreed, though he had no intention of holding her to hard labor. She looked like she would fall over if a strong wind blew through. That night, Quinn gave Rebecca his bed and moved his things to the barn. She protested, but he insisted, and she was too tired to fight much. Thomas slept curled up with his mother, and Quinn could hear the soft murmur of her voice through the walls, singing lullabies that made his chest ache with a loneliness he had tried hard to ignore. The next morning, Quinn woke to the smell of bacon and fresh coffee. He entered the house to find Rebecca already dressed and cooking breakfast. She had found his limited supplies and was making the most of them, and the spread she laid out was far better than anything he had managed. "You did not have to do all this," he said. "I told you I would earn my keep." She poured him coffee with a small smile. "Besides, cooking for more than just Thomas and myself is nice, makes things feel almost normal." Thomas was already at the table, clean and dressed in clothes that Rebecca had somehow managed to mend and wash overnight. The boy was chattering happily to his mother, more animated than Quinn had seen him in weeks. Over breakfast, they talked about practical matters. Rebecca's horse needed at least a week of rest and good feed before attempting any serious travel. Rebecca herself still looked fragile, and Quinn suspected she was pushing herself harder than she should. He mentioned needing help organizing his storage shed, which was a lie, but it gave her something to do that was not too strenuous. The days took on a new rhythm. Rebecca took over the cooking and the household tasks, bringing an order to Quinn's life that he had not realized was missing. She had a way of making the small house feel like a home, adding small touches here and there. Wildflowers in a jar on the table, curtains she sewed from spare fabric, the smell of bread baking in the afternoon. Thomas flourished with his mother back. His laughter filled the property, and Quinn discovered that he liked the sound of it. The boy still sought out Quinn's company, wanting to help with chores and asking his endless questions. But now he would run back to Rebecca periodically, as if checking to make sure she was still there. Quinn found himself watching Rebecca more than he should. The way she hummed while she worked, the gentleness in her hands when she braided Thomas's hair, the strength in her voice when she told her son stories about his father, keeping the man's memory alive. She had been through hell and had made impossible choices in impossible circumstances, yet there was no bitterness in her, just a quiet determination to keep moving forward. On the fourth day, Quinn was fixing a section of fence when Rebecca brought him water. Thomas was napping inside, worn out from chasing chickens all morning. Rebecca settled on a nearby stump watching Quinn work. "You are good with him," she said. "With Thomas. He talks about you constantly. Quinn showed me this. Quinn taught me that. Quinn says I am getting strong." Quinn drove another nail, not trusting himself to respond immediately. "He is a good boy, he is, and you have been good to him, better than I was." "Stop." The word came out sharper than he intended. Quinn set down his hammer and turned to face her. "You did what you thought you had to do to keep him alive. You were sick and alone and trying to make an impossible choice. You do not get to beat yourself up for that." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I left my child in the middle of nowhere. What kind of mother does that?" The kind who was desperate and terrified and trying to save him the only way she knew how. The kind who came back the moment she was able. Quinn took a step closer. "You think I do not see how much you love him. You think Thomas does not know. That boy knows he is loved. That is what matters." A tear slipped down Rebecca's cheek. "Thank you for saying that, for understanding." They stood there in the afternoon sun, something unspoken passing between them. Quinn felt it in his chest, that twist that had started the day he found Thomas but had somehow become about this woman too. She was beautiful and strong and broken in all the ways he understood, and he wanted to protect her from every harsh thing the world might throw her way. But she was leaving. In a few days, She would be strong enough and her horse would be rested enough, and she would go to her sister in Sacramento. Thomas would go with her as he should, and Quinn would go back to being alone, which suddenly felt impossible to bear. That evening, after Thomas was in bed, Rebecca sat with Quinn on the porch. The air was cool, autumn settling into the valley with gentle fingers. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. "Tell me about yourself," Rebecca said. "Thomas has told me bits and pieces, but I want to hear it from you. You have opened your home to strangers. You have been kinder than we had any right to expect. I want to know the man behind that kindness." Quinn was not used to talking about himself. His life had not been particularly interesting, and the parts that were interesting were not stories he liked to tell. But something about the night and the woman beside him loosened his tongue. He told her about growing up on a ranch in Nevada, the middle of 5 boys. About learning to ride before he could walk and how to rope cattle before he could write his name. About his father who was hard but fair and his mother who died when Quinn was 12. About his brothers scattering to the winds as they grew, chasing different dreams in different directions. He told her about the years of drifting, working ranches and cattle drives, and taking whatever jobs came his way. About the brief period where he pinned on a badge and hunted men for money, and how he had quit after having to bring in a boy barely older than 18 who had stolen a horse out of desperation. About his uncle leaving him this land, and how he had come here thinking he might finally put down roots, though he had no idea how to build a life that was not just survival. Rebecca listened without interruption, her eyes reflecting the starlight. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You are not as alone as you think you are," she said softly. "You have built something here, a place, a home. Thomas adores you, that means something. Thomas is yours. You will take him to Sacramento and start your new life, and that will be that. Is that what you think will happen?" Quinn turned to look at her. "Is it not?" Rebecca pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I wrote to my sister while I was at the mission, told her what happened, that I was coming. Her reply caught up with me in Watsonville when I was asking the sheriff about Thomas. Her husband lost his job. They are moving to his family's place in Montana. There is no room for us there. She sent what money she could to help, but it was not much." The words hung in the air between them. "So what will you do?" "I do not know." Her voice cracked slightly. "I have been trying not to think about it because every time I do, I panic. I have no money, no prospects, nowhere to go. The only thing I know for certain is that I will not leave Thomas again. Whatever comes, we face it together." Quinn's mind was racing. He knew what he wanted to say, but it was crazy. They had known each other for less than a week. You did not just invite a woman and her child to stay permanently based on a few days of shared meals and conversation. That was not how these things worked. Except he could not stand the thought of them leaving. Could not stand the thought of Rebecca facing the world alone with no safety net. Could not stand the thought of Thomas being uprooted again when he had finally started to feel secure. "Stay," he said. Rebecca looked at him, confusion in her eyes. "What? Stay here? You and Thomas? I have the land, the house. It is not much, but it is stable. Thomas is happy here. You could be happy here too, maybe." "Quinn, I cannot just stay. That is not proper. People would talk." "Let them talk." "I have never cared much what people thought." He turned to face her fully. "I know this is sudden. I know we barely know each other, but I also know that having you and Thomas here these past few days has been the best days I can remember having in years. The house feels alive. I feel alive. And I think maybe you feel something too, or maybe I am completely wrong about that." Rebecca was staring at him, her expression unreadable. Quinn pressed on, feeling like he was on a runaway horse and the only choice was to hold on. "I am not asking for anything improper. You could have the bedroom. I will stay in the barn. We could tell people in town that you are my housekeeper if that makes it more respectable. Or we could be honest and say that I am helping a widow and her child get back on their feet. I do not care what story we tell as long as you stay." "Why?" Rebecca whispered. "Why would you do this for us?" Quinn looked at her, at this woman who had survived so much and kept fighting, and he knew he had to be honest. "Because somewhere between finding your son on that trail and watching you with him these past days, I started to care. About him, about you, about what happens to you both. I have spent my whole life alone, telling myself that was what I wanted. Then Thomas came along and reminded me that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. And then you came, and suddenly I am imagining a future I never let myself consider before. Maybe that is crazy. Maybe I am completely out of line, but I am asking anyway. Stay." Tears were streaming down Rebecca's face now. "You barely know me. Then give me time to know you. Give us both time to figure out what this is." She was quiet for so long that Quinn thought she would say no. Thought she would leave in the morning and he would watch her ride away with Thomas, and that would be the end of it. But then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers small and cold in his. "I am scared," she admitted. "I am scared of being a burden, scared of what people will say, scared of letting myself hope for something that might not work out." "I am scared too," Quinn said. "But I think sometimes being scared means you are doing something that matters." Rebecca laughed through her tears. "When did you become a philosopher? Must be your influence. You bring out sides of me I did not know existed." She squeezed his hand. "If I stay, if we do this, I need you to understand something. I am not a charity case. I will contribute, I will work. And if there comes a time when this arrangement is not working for you anymore, you have to promise to tell me. I will not have Thomas growing attached to a place we might have to leave suddenly." "The only way you are leaving is if you choose to," Quinn said firmly. "This is your home now, yours and Thomas's, for as long as you want it. You really mean that, do not you?" "Every word." Rebecca looked out at the dark yard, at the land that stretched beyond what they could see. "Then yes, we will stay, at least for a while, at least until we figure out what happens next." Relief flooded through Quinn, so intense it almost hurt. He brought her hand up and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that felt both bold and right. "Thank you." They sat together on the porch until the cold drove them inside. That night, Quinn lay in his bedroll in the barn and stared at the ceiling, wondering what he had just done. He had invited a woman and her child to live with him, indefinitely based on feelings he barely understood and could not explain. It went against every practical, logical bone in his body, but it also felt right in a way nothing else had in years. The next morning, Quinn rode into Watsonville to speak with Sheriff Daniels. He explained the situation, leaving out his feelings but emphasizing the practical arrangement of providing a home for a widow and child in need. The sheriff raised his eyebrows but did not object. There was no law against kindness, and in frontier towns, people made all kinds of arrangements to survive. "Just be careful," Daniels warned. "People will talk regardless of the truth, and if your feelings are involved, well, that complicates things." "I know what I am doing," Quinn said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. "I hope so. That woman has been through hell. She does not need more heartbreak. I am not going to hurt her. Not intentionally, maybe, but good intentions are not always enough." The words stayed with Quinn as he rode back to the ranch. He knew the sheriff was right. Getting close to someone meant risking pain for both of them. But he also knew that he could not walk away now even if he wanted to. Over the following weeks, they settled into a life together. Rebecca took over the household completely, bringing an efficiency and warmth that transformed the simple house. She was up before dawn, starting coffee and breakfast. She kept the place spotless, mended their clothes, and cooked meals that made Quinn look forward to the end of each day. But she did more than that. She helped with the outside chores too, feeding chickens and collecting eggs, tending the small vegetable garden, even helping with the horses. She was strong and capable, and Quinn found himself appreciating her as a partner rather than just someone he was helping. Thomas thrived. He grew bolder, more confident. Quinn taught him to ride on the gentlest of his horses, and the boy took to it naturally. Rebecca would watch them from the porch, her hand shading her eyes, a smile playing at her lips. Those moments felt like a glimpse of something Quinn had never dared to want. The townspeople did talk, as expected. Some looked at them with disapproval when Quinn brought Rebecca and Thomas to town for supplies. Others were kinder, seeing only a man helping a family in need. Rebecca handled it all with grace, her head held high, refusing to show any shame. They established boundaries without discussing them explicitly. Quinn stayed in the barn. Rebecca had the house with Thomas. During the day they worked together, ate together, talked and laughed together. But at night they separated, maintaining propriety even though Quinn found it increasingly difficult, because the truth was he was falling in love with her. It happened slowly, then all at once. It was in the way she sang while she worked, her voice sweet and clear. In the way she listened when he talked, really listened, making him feel heard in a way he had never experienced. In the way she laughed at his rare attempts at humor, throwing her head back with genuine delight. In the way she looked at Thomas with such fierce love that it made Quinn's heart ache. He loved the strength in her, the way she faced each day with determination despite everything she had been through. He loved her kindness, extended not just to him and Thomas, but to everyone she met. He loved the way she had turned his house into a home with small touches that spoke of care and attention. He loved her, and he did not know what to do about it. It was late November when things changed between them. The weather had turned cold, and Quinn was in the barn one evening tending to a mare who was due to foal soon. He had been out there for hours, checking on her periodically, when Rebecca appeared in the doorway wrapped in a thick shawl. "Thomas is asleep," she said. "I thought you might want some company." "Always," Quinn replied before he could think better of it. Rebecca smiled and came to stand beside him at the stall door. They watched the mare together in comfortable silence. The barn was warm from the animals and the hay, lit by a single lantern that cast long shadows. "She is going to be a good mother," Rebecca said quietly. "You can tell by the way she has been preparing her space." "How do you know about horses?" "My father had a small farm before he died. I grew up around animals. It is part of why I have been able to help you here. I am not completely useless." Quinn turned to look at her. "I have never thought you were useless, not for 1 second. I know. You have made me feel capable again, valued." I did not realize how much I needed that until I had it. There was something in her voice, something soft and vulnerable that made Quinn's pulse quicken. He turned to face her fully, and she did the same. The space between them seemed to shrink even though neither of them moved. "Rebecca," he started, then stopped, not sure what he wanted to say. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." "You do," she nodded, her eyes shining in the lamplight. "I have been trying not to. Trying to maintain distance and remember that this is an arrangement, a practical solution to a problem. But then you smile at Thomas, and I see how much you care about him. Or you look at me in a certain way and I feel warm all over. Or you do something kind without thinking twice about it, and I realize I am not just grateful anymore. I am feeling things I thought I would never feel again." Quinn's heart was pounding. "What kind of things?" Rebecca took a small step closer. "The kind of things that are probably too soon and definitely too complicated. The kind of things that scare me because I have only known you for weeks. but somehow it feels like longer. The kind of things that make me lie awake at night wondering if you feel the same or if I am imagining it all. You are not imagining anything, Quinn said, his voice rough. I am falling for you, Rebecca. Maybe I already fell. I do not know exactly when it happened, but somewhere between your strength and your kindness and the way you have brought light into my life, I stopped being able to imagine a future without you in it. Her breath caught. Quinn, I know it is fast. I know we should be sensible about this. But I have never felt this way about anyone, and I do not want to waste time pretending I do not care when I care more than I have words for. Rebecca reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle against his rough cheek. I was afraid I would never feel anything again after David died. I thought that part of me was closed off forever. But then there was you, so different from him but good in all the ways that matter. You make me want to take risks again, want to hope again. Quinn covered her hand with his own. Then take a risk. Hope. I promise I will do everything I can to prove that it was not a mistake. She smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. I already know it is not a mistake. That is what scares me. This feels too good to be true. It is true, Quinn said. It is real. We are real. And then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and everything else fell away. It was not a dramatic kiss, not desperate or wild. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. It tasted like hope and new beginnings, and when they finally pulled apart, Quinn felt like his entire world had shifted on its axis. Rebecca pressed her forehead to his. What do we do now? We take it one day at a time. We figure it out as we go, and we do not hide what we feel anymore. People in town will definitely talk now. Then let us give them something worth talking about. Rebecca laughed, the sound bright and joyful. What did you have in mind? Quinn pulled back enough to look at her seriously. Marry me. Her eyes went wide. What? I know it is crazy. I know we have only known each other a short time. But I also know that I love you and I want to build a life with you. A real life, not just an arrangement. I want to be a father to Thomas if he will have me. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to build something lasting with you. So marry me, Rebecca, please. She was crying again, but smiling too. You are absolutely insane. Is that a yes? Yes, you ridiculous man. Yes, I will marry you. Quinn pulled her close and kissed her again, longer this time, pouring everything he felt into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless and laughing. I do not even have a ring, Quinn said. I do not need a ring, I just need you. They stood there in the barn, holding each other, making plans in hushed voices. They would talk to Thomas in the morning. They would go to town and speak to the pastor. They would have a simple ceremony, nothing fancy, just the beginning of their life together. The next morning, Quinn and Rebecca sat Thomas down together. The boy looked between them with curious eyes. Thomas, there is something we want to talk to you about, Rebecca started gently. Are we leaving? Thomas asked immediately, fear flashing across his face. No, baby, no. Rebecca pulled him close. We are not leaving. This is our home now, but Quinn and I have been talking and we want to make it official. We want to be a family. A real family. How would you feel about that? Thomas looked at Quinn. Would you be my papa? Quinn's throat tightened. I would be honored to be your papa if that is what you want. I want that. Thomas launched himself at Quinn, hugging him tightly. I want you to be my papa and mama to be happy and all of us to stay together forever. Quinn held the boy, meeting Rebecca's eyes over his head. She was crying again, but they were happy tears. Then that is what we will do, Quinn promised. We will stay together forever. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Watsonville. Rebecca wore a simple dress she had made herself, and Quinn wore his cleanest clothes and the tie he had owned for years but never worn. Thomas stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, his face split in a huge grin. Sheriff Daniels was there, along with a handful of townspeople who had come to support them. The pastor spoke about love and commitment and the families we choose, and when it came time to exchange vows, Quinn's voice was steady and sure. "I promise to love you and Thomas, to provide for you, to protect you, and to cherish every day we have together. I promise to be the man you deserve and the father Thomas needs. I promise that my home is your home, my heart is your heart, for as long as we both live." Rebecca's vows were simpler but no less powerful. "I promise to stand beside you in good times and bad. I promise to love you with everything I have. I promise to build a life with you that is full of joy and laughter and hope. You saved us, Quinn, in every way that matters. Now let me spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me." When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed his bride with Thomas cheering between them, and it felt like everything in his life had finally clicked into place. The weeks that followed were the happiest Quinn had ever known. Rebecca moved into his room, and waking up next to her each morning felt like a miracle he did not deserve. They fell into a new rhythm, this one deeper and more intimate than before. Rebecca continued to run the household, but now there was no pretense of it being just a job. This was her home, their home, and she shaped it accordingly. Quinn taught Thomas more about ranching, and the boy soaked up every lesson. In the evenings, they would sit together as a family, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. Winter settled over California, bringing cold nights and occasional rain. Quinn expanded the barn, preparing to grow his herd in the spring. Rebecca planted a bigger garden, planning for the future. Thomas grew taller and stronger, losing some of his little boy softness and gaining confidence with each passing day. They made love for the first time on Christmas Eve, in the bedroom they now shared, with snow falling gently outside and Thomas fast asleep in the other room. It was tender and slow, both of them learning each other, giving and receiving in equal measure. Afterwards, Rebecca lay in Quinn's arms, her head on his chest. "I never thought I would have this again," she whispered. "A husband who loves me, a home that feels safe, a future that does not terrify me." Quinn kissed her hair. "You deserve all of this and more. So do you. You spent so long alone thinking that was what you wanted, but you were meant for this, Quinn, meant to be a husband and father, meant to build something lasting. I did not know that until you showed me." She tilted her head up to kiss him. "Then I guess we saved each other. I guess we did." As winter gave way to spring, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn one morning in early March, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, her eyes nervous and excited. Quinn's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He pulled her into his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby," she confirmed, laughing too. "Thomas is going to lose his mind. Should we tell him now?" They did, and Thomas's reaction was everything they hoped for. He wanted to know everything. When would the baby come? Would it be a boy or girl? Could he help take care of it? Could he teach it things like Quinn taught him? The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Rebecca bloomed, her face glowing with health and happiness. Quinn was attentive to the point of being almost overbearing, constantly worrying about her well-being. She tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from a place of love. Summer arrived, hot and dry. Quinn's small ranch was thriving. He had purchased more cattle and was building a solid reputation in the area for fair dealing and quality stock. People in town no longer whispered about his family. They had proven themselves, earned respect through hard work and integrity. In late August, Rebecca went into labor. Quinn sent Thomas to fetch the midwife from town while he stayed with Rebecca, holding her hand and trying not to panic. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Quinn was terrified they would lose her. But Rebecca was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known. And as dawn broke on a new day, their son was born. They named him Daniel Quinn Montgomery. He was small and red and perfect, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. Thomas was immediately smitten with his baby brother, wanting to hold him constantly and help with every task. Quinn held his son for the first time and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. This tiny human was his, really his, the product of his love for Rebecca. It was overwhelming and humbling and absolutely perfect. The years that followed were full and rich. Daniel grew from an infant to a toddler to a little boy who followed Thomas everywhere. Thomas shot up in height, becoming a gangly young man who was Quinn's right hand on the ranch. Rebecca remained the center of their family, the heart that kept them all connected. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah Rose when Daniel was 3, and another son named Michael when Sarah was 2. The house that had once felt too big for just Quinn now felt perfectly sized for their growing family. The sound of children's laughter was constant, and Quinn could not remember what silence used to feel like. Thomas grew into a fine young man. At 18, he told Quinn he wanted to learn more about animal husbandry and asked permission to apprentice with a breeder in the next county. Quinn gave his blessing, proud of the man his adopted son had become. Thomas left but returned often, and eventually brought home a young woman named Catherine, whom he married in a ceremony that filled Quinn with bittersweet pride. Daniel took after Quinn, serious and steady, with a natural talent for working with horses. Sarah was her mother's daughter, kind and capable with a fierce independence. Michael was the wild one, always getting into trouble, keeping them all on their toes. On quiet evenings, when the children were finally asleep and the ranch was settled, Quinn and Rebecca would sit on the porch as they had that first night when everything changed. She would lean against him and he would wrap his arm around her, and they would watch the sun set over land that was truly theirs. "Do you ever think about that day?" Rebecca asked one such evening. They were in their early 50s now, gray threading through their hair, lines around their eyes. "When you found Thomas on that trail, all the time," Quinn admitted, "I think about how close I came to riding past. I almost did not stop. I was hurt and tired and just wanted to get home. But you did stop. Best decision I ever made." Rebecca smiled. "Second best. The first was asking me to stay. You are right. That was definitely first." She laughed and kissed him. Even after all these years, her kiss still made his heart race. "We have built a good life, Quinn, a really good life. We have, better than I ever imagined possible." "Do you have any regrets?" Quinn thought about it seriously. His life had not been easy. There had been struggles, hardships, moments when he had not been sure they would make it. But looking back at everything they had built together, all the love and laughter and legacy, he knew his answer. "Not a single one. You." Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder. "Only that I waited so long to find you, but maybe we needed to go through everything we did to be ready for each other. Maybe so." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. Inside the house, their children slept safely. Thomas was building his own life now but would always be part of theirs. The ranch was prosperous, the land fertile, the future bright. Quinn thought back to the man he had been before Thomas and Rebecca entered his life. Lonely, drifting, going through the motions of living without really being alive. He had thought solitude was enough, that needing nothing and no one made him strong. How wrong he had been. Strength, he had learned, was not in standing alone. It was in building connections, taking risks, opening your heart even when it terrified you. It was in the everyday moments of family life, the mundane and the magical all woven together. It was in the woman beside him who had trusted him with her heart and her son. It was in the children they had created together, each one a testament to their love. "I love you," Quinn said, the words as true now as they had been the first time he said them. "I love you too," Rebecca replied. "Always have, always will." Inside, baby Michael started crying and they could hear Sarah's voice soothing him. Rebecca moved to get up, but Quinn stopped her. "I will get him. You rest." "You sure?" "Absolutely." Quinn stood and headed inside, pausing at the door to look back at his wife. She smiled at him, and he smiled back, feeling the same rush of love and gratitude that had become as natural as breathing. He checked on Michael, changing him and settling him back to sleep with practiced ease. Then he looked in on Daniel and Sarah, both sleeping peacefully in the room they shared. His children, his family, his world. Quinn returned to the porch where Rebecca waited. She took his hand and they sat together under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their past. The lonely cowboy was lonely no more. He had a wife who was his partner and his love. He had children who filled his days with purpose and his heart with joy. He had a home that was more than just walls and a roof. It was a place where love lived and grew. And it had all started with a choice to stop to help, to care about a scared little boy on a mountain trail. Sometimes, Quinn thought, the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. The unexpected turns that changed everything. The strangers who became family. The moments of compassion that rippled out into futures you could never have imagined. He had set out that day in 1876, just trying to get home. He had found something far better. He had found his purpose, his family, his heart. He had found everything he never knew he needed. As the night deepened and the desert cooled, Quinn and Rebecca eventually made their way to bed. They moved through their nighttime routine with the ease of decades together. Quinn locked up while Rebecca checked on the children one last time. They met in their bedroom, helping each other out of their clothes and slipping under the quilts Rebecca had sewn. "Good night, my love," Rebecca whispered, curling into Quinn's side. "Good night," Quinn replied, kissing her forehead. He lay awake for a while after she fell asleep, listening to her gentle breathing and the sounds of his children sleeping nearby. He thought about all the years behind them and all the years still to come. About Thomas building his own family, about watching his younger children grow and find their own paths, about grandchildren who would fill these rooms with laughter someday. It was more than he had ever dared to dream, more than he deserved. But it was his, earned through love and commitment and showing up every single day. Quinn Montgomery, once a lonely drifter with nothing to his name but a horse and a gun, now had everything that mattered. A family who loved him, a legacy that would outlast him. A life that was full and meaningful and exactly what he had unknowingly been searching for all along. As sleep finally claimed him, Quinn's last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude. For the stranger's child he had found on that trail. For the mother who had returned and stolen his heart. For every moment that had led him to this place, this life, this perfect, imperfect family. He was home, truly home in all the ways that mattered. And it was everything,